Welcome to the T4TCS podcast and YouTube channel. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and provide your feedback in terms of ideas and topics that you believe are related to T4TCS. We would like to take the time to let our viewers and listeners know that the information discussed here is not to be interpreted as a clinical approach to trauma and psychology. T4TCS was designed to provide insightful information on topics related to post-traumatic growth, finding solutions to somatic healing through a mind and body connection that works for you. It also serves as a platform for members from various communities to learn about positive effects of a trauma-informed approach to self-defense and martial arts training. And now, take the time to enjoy the show.
All right. Hey, everybody. This is our second, after the intro, so the first episode, really, of the T4T CS podcast. I'm here myself with Eric, Jacob, and Mark. We kind of want to kick it off first a little bit because I was blessed with being able to speak at Durham College with some of the students in a postgraduate program and the mental health and psych program earlier this week. And Jacob was there, and he did an amazing job at doing the videography and stuff like that. But he also got to witness part of the trauma-informed program that I deliver. So what got to me there, or what a light bulb went off to me, was, hey, we can use this for our training purposes internally with our team. And so we took that opportunity to actually put Mark and Jacob through the trauma-informed course, and they went through it and finished today. So congratulations to them. And I want to touch a little bit on that subject matter, because earlier this afternoon they had some amazing questions, and I think would be a great segue into our subject today with respect to this episode's podcast. And that's when people approach or they join a dojo or a training center, and what purpose they have. And the whole idea behind Train for Trauma Combative Sciences is that we want to build programs to help people who come in with some background in trauma, and even if they don't realize it, to help support them and help them grow through their process of learning martial arts and self-defense, and help them recognize how they can get a good experience out of it. And so where we want to talk about today is identifying a client's purpose, and whether they want to take the self-defense training or martial arts training for the purposes of self-defense, or they're getting into it for combat reasons, whether they are in a line of work that requires it, or they want to get into it for competition. So there's some differences there, and we want to talk about that, and that'll be more from Mark and Jacob's point of view. I know a bit about that, but I'll touch base on sort of the mindset that's required and that we want to pay attention to there with respect to trauma. So just to ask a couple of questions, how did you guys like the trauma-informed lecture, and some of the key points that you guys took away that our listeners and viewers can actually benefit from this the episode today?
It was very eye-opening. I realized that there's actually more happening than I thought. Kind of behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
When all the action is over, the trauma is still there, and you got to work through it. I never realized that. I had an idea, of course, listening to veterans and stuff like that, that the trauma is there, but I realized that you don't have to be in war to really have an extremely traumatic experience, and be sometimes even more messed up than someone who's coming back from war.
Yeah, I mean, that possibility is there, right? And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I always thought that it only happens in the worst cases, and obviously there are some cases that are rape and stuff like that, or like some really extreme violence. Um, but sometimes it's something that's might seem not even that extreme, but yet it's extremely impactful to that person.
Right, right. And then we talk, because we talk about the core values and the epigenetics that, and then
Absolutely.
the trauma kindling that we're talking about, and all those things that that person sort of brings to the table before they even walk into that moment, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. That's happy that that was a takeaway too. And I've been in conversations with certain people too, where, and I saw this more when I began taking the training in mental health first aid and so on. Some people go in there for the purposes of because they have to, and some people start sharing their stories, and then you take a break and somebody starts comparing their traumatic event versus another's, and it's sort of downplays another person's traumatic event, which then closes that person off and doesn't allow them to actually share what they need to share and talk about it. So it's not great for conversation management. It's not great for people that are dealing with stuff to actually trust another person to get it off their chest. So understanding that there's a background that everybody brings to the table is super important, and allowing them to share that is big. And like you said, just because it doesn't seem that big for one person doesn't mean it isn't for the person who's experiencing it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. What about yourself, Mark?
Well, first, I just want to say, like, when I listened to that work, I was really, unfortunately, I couldn't make it. I would have liked to gone there, but man, I'm telling you, like, I was listening to that work and I was really impressed. I was impressed on how you articulated things. I was impressed on how as the speech went on, you can tell like they were getting more captured. And the information I was listening to, it was funny because while I was hearing it and I was listening to what you were saying and the points and the different parts that you were addressing, I was starting to like reflect on myself and realize what my traumas are. And it's funny because we've all gone things through our life, and there's the things that stand out the most, and then there's the things that stick with you. You don't know why they stick with you, but you start to understand how the impact is in your life. And we're talking about the epigenetics, right?
Yeah.
And understanding how someone's environment can directly impact or desensitize you, or how it makes you take in the trauma and what you're willing to take versus somebody else, and how you were saying that some people can go through the same experience, but it could affect somebody right away versus 10 years. It was very interesting because everybody handles things differently, but we all handle something. And the way that the body takes account of everything that happens to us, whether we realize what's going on or not, it was eye-opening for me. And then at the same time, it's like, man, so many people we interact with every day, and we all have our quirks, we all have our things, but now it's like, it makes me sit down and say, like, what's the driving force behind their actions? And it makes me more conscious of how I act around them, and also why am I acting the way I'm acting around them? Could they be triggering something, and it makes me be either closed off, more open?
Yeah.
What is it, right? And it's just opened up a can of worms for me, and it really has. But I'm enjoying it because, like I said, some of it's validating, and it's making me understand why we spoke about this earlier today. I healed myself without realizing what I was doing, but what I was doing are actually the steps on how to get somebody through the trauma by releasing it physically and artistically. Because I draw and paint a lot too, and that was one of my go-tos as a kid. And now I'm understanding why I was drawn to that. So listening to you speak and address it and language it, it was making sense, and it was resonating. That was really good.
I'm happy to hear that. And those are some key points too, is that we talk about we bring that stuff and the trauma we build up. We can have people that go through a program in the dojo, and everybody goes through the same program to get to the same level. But at some point, depending on what they bring into the dojo or the training center, they'll reach a certain stress level and a stress point individually before another person will, or another person might not even reach that stress level throughout their entire time, and then leave there and everything seems to be okay. And then, for the sake of argument and just putting a scenario out there, we hear about that person in the news maybe sometime. right? And that something bad happened to them, because we carry this stuff. We could walk into the same situation like we were just talking about, and I use like a military analogy, or even just a law enforcement or a standardized training portion or analogy, is that we could all be trained at the same level in the same subject matter and pass at the same standard, which is very high, and the threshold is extremely high. But we all walk away, let's say, for example, for years, seeing the same things at the same time, and walk in one day on the same call and see the same scenario, deal with the same thing, and turn around, and one of us might be affected within 10 seconds and never want to go back, because we're completely broken down. The other can walk away and enjoy another 10 years in their career. Another one, it could be 3 months before they start to feel something. And that, like you said, we talk about the epigenetics and the core values, but then also the stress inoculation. We go through it looking at a situation, training and doing repetitive drills and stuff, and desensitizing against it, and then we forget about the rest of the stuff that's going on around us, right? So being, what you mentioned there too, is what I get away is that you're more now self-aware, but also emotionally intelligent with respect to what somebody else might be going through when you're approaching them in a conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I'm excited about doing this and combining the martial arts, because I have experience and helping share that side of things, right? But now it's like, for me, it gets me excited to think about how can I use this new knowledge with how I teach things. And that could be something as simple as understanding when to go slow, when to go fast, when to add in stress, when to pull back stress, what to look for physically, how to address what they might be feeling psychologically. And in doing that, I'm better catering to my client in a way that shows compassion, but pushing development, pushing comfort, and realizing when is too much.
Yeah.
And allowing them time to, and this is another thing I took away, give people time to feel it. Give people time, a chance to feel what they're feeling, instead of trying to always fix it, you know? Like suck it up or shake it off. Or it's important that we don't coddle people, but it's important we respect and address that what they're feeling is what they're feeling, and they need to feel it. But then address it, face it, and get back at it.
Yeah.
In a way that's not going to scare them away. And like I said, I've seen it. It's been done to me before too. You know, you've had some bad experiences at some gyms. Some gyms are just, they're not. There's a lot of gyms out there that I don't think take this into consideration at all.
Yeah, and I come from, like, my original background. This is going back years. The Juco Ryu style that I came from, and even you look at military training. There's a different purpose behind it, though. However, but it was still very paramilitaristic in terms of how they did their training. Everybody did the exact same thing. If you couldn't hack it, and I'm sorry, maybe find a different place. And there's a place for that.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? But it doesn't, it sort of stunts the growth and the post-traumatic growth for somebody who's carrying something or who wants to go there for self-defense reasons, right? Because if we turn around and we say something like that to somebody who's potentially triggered during that training program that day, and we say, well, suck it up, maybe you find another gym, how are they going to gain trust in wanting to come back to another place? They're not, right? Yeah. And so having that available to people, I think, is incredibly important, and having them know that this is what we can do and help that growth. And like you said, not stunt the growth and help it continue is incredibly important. But that also brings me to another point, and we talked about this earlier too, Jacob, when you were there, is the cycles of response, right? Going through those stages of response and allowing that full cycle to happen, right? And then doing that, and what you were asking about is how do you deal with that? Well, that's that debrief, right?
Yeah.
It's allowing that whole process to happen and really understand, what did I just go through? What am I experiencing? And then how do we move past this? Do I need to take a step back and step away for today? Or can I regulate, and then now let's, like what you said, Mark, let's turn up the heat a little bit or dial it back as we go forward. So recognizing that during like either a roll, a sparring session with doing Muay Thai, that sort of stuff, seeing that with a client is incredibly huge, right?
No, I agree. And what I really took out of this, that I realized that with this approach and this knowledge, you can actually push people beyond their boundaries, because now you know how to. I think people sometimes realize that their limit is actually quite more than they thought.
Mm-hmm.
But if you push them in that meathead attitude, that's just not gonna go. But if you have the right approach, you can actually, have a mom of two, that came in to do, just kind of Taibo or whatever exercise stuff, to actually do serious self-defense, because through, the right approach, you build that confidence, and she's realizing, oh wow, I'm actually capable of doing way more than I thought.
Yeah.
But if you just approach her with that like hammer style, kind of don't be a pussy
Yeah.
kind of attitude, that would never work. Yeah,
Yeah.
because and me and Mark we kind of experienced that, because back in the day, I don't think there was as much education about these kind of things. So a lot of times it was just like, yeah, suck it up and just deal with it.
Yeah, it's different gym culture.
It was a different, yeah, exactly. It was a different gym culture, and that's why sometimes right now we have certain issues that are coming out, simply because we didn't have that debrief. It was kind of like, okay, we're just gonna like keep it in, and hopefully it doesn't overflow, which is it's not the right way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place and time for that, but at the same, like the general population, it's not. We're seeing it right now with the way things are happening, right? All the catalysts and the way people are acting. Every other day we're out there, we hear about either a stabbing, an attack, an ambush, a carjacking, whatever it is. Like, you can't turn the news on without hearing something like that happening.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Outside. And everybody's carrying something, and more than likely those individuals that are perpetrating those malicious acts are carrying something with them. But also it's affecting other people, and they're afraid to go out there, right? So everybody's carrying some trauma, right? And everybody that's out there they're finding an outlet for that trauma to come out, right? There's an argument there. Not a lot of people agree with it, but most of the research does support it, and that in terms of trauma itself, it's stored in a physical manner, right? Gabor Mate's got a book that says When the Body Says No. We got Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, he talks about the body keeps the score, and Peter Levine. Like, there's so many books that support the fact that when we go through this stuff and it's unchecked and it's unprocessed, it's stored in the body, and it can start breaking us down physically, making us sick, chronic illness, pain, all this other stuff. So it's an interesting segue into our subject in terms of get into training. I think, Mark, you said that you went through Transforming Trauma through Jiu-Jitsu, one of the books that I had talked about, and you started reading it. So it goes into that somatic experience and being able to release that trauma and giving more space for the new positive energy to come in, right? Like, success breeds success, right? So the more we get coached through it, knowing that this is not the end. When I hit a space, or I'm stuck in a move somewhere where I can't figure out a way out immediately, right? It's not the end of it. We got to slow ourselves down and regulate, right? We were talking about that a little bit too.
Yeah, one of the things in that book, I was listening to it. It was really good. Well, first of all, I want to say, with regards to the physicality as a way to release the energy, I think that's just a no-brainer, because even if it doesn't make sense at first, but when somebody says it, it's kind of like, oh, that makes sense. Because what do people do when they're upset, when they're angry, right? They want to hit something. They have to release it. They have to release it, right?
Yep.
And how do you do that in a positive way that's going to give you benefit, right? So first off, I think even more so than boxing or sparring in Muay Thai or kickboxing, I think grappling, any grappling art, is, I think, the best way to release that energy, because of the tactile and constant pressure of the give and take.
The force on force conflict.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because within that, you're constantly dealing with that pressure, and you're constantly having to regulate and find balance and breath and frame and think.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on there, and it's constant. Whereas standing up, you have a chance to move away. But when you can't move away, you're just dealing with that adversity of feeling that trapped, so to speak, right? And that sometimes just trying to buck and go crazy and with unfocused energy is not going to serve you anything. It's a really good analogy to look at it. Versus, okay, I'm in the fight, I face the fight, I have to control my breath, first of all, my emotional state. Then I have to think how I'm going to, what do I need to address? Then you have to create a plan of action and then do it calculated and patient. And if that's not an analogy of dealing with a problem, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
But that physical exertion. And then the other part of the book that I thought was very interesting is when they were talking with regards to a woman who, like a rape victim who came in, right?
Yeah.
And so now we were talking about this earlier. And I'll bring it up again because for me it was just, it resonated well and it illustrated the idea really well. Is that woman now has a traumatic experience being under a man. Now that experience in her head is so dramatic that now her brain is going to equate that to every time she's under a man, it equals violence or danger.
Yep.
Now that can affect your sex life, it can affect sports, it can affect a lot of different aspects. Marriage, everything, right? And that's one of the things too that's really hard, especially for rape victims who are married, how the relationship and dynamic changes of her lens with her partner.
Yeah.
So, and that usually ends marriages, and then she's never really fully healed from that.
Yeah.
Because now she has the trauma of losing a loved one when it wasn't their fault, and then she has guilt associated. But
and just keep adding the
yeah, exactly.
adding the kindling to
and
the,
then the triggers happen quicker. And so, like, see, I'm learning to understand how this all fits together. But back to the point I was saying was the idea of now rewriting or reprogramming the brain to understand that the result is not always going to be the same when under the male. So now, if I have as an instructor, if I know, and back to our point, what is my job here? My job as an instructor, why is this person reaching out to me? And I don't think a lot of instructors, when they first take in a student, maybe just sit down and have a conversation with them first. Yeah. Before training with them, before doing anything, sit down and like interview like you're doing for a job. Because maybe this person can say to me, you know, this is what I'm looking for. And if I'm honest, I can say, you know what? I'm not the guy for you, but I know someone great I can refer you to. That's, you know, because now it's not about me or my school or my revenue. I'm actually now interested in benefiting someone's life.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think that's something that a lot of people do. But now having the option to have these skills that you're providing and having you there is big, because whether they come in for sport, for self-defense, if they say self-defense, I already know the combative sides I have experience with, but now I know, okay, when doing this, you're coming to me for self-defense, what's the reason?
Yeah, and they may not want to disclose it right away.
Right away, but what is the reason? Has there been an incident?
Yeah.
Without getting into detail, if they tell me there's an incident, I already know in my mind, I need to look for triggers. I need to watch my approach. I need to make sure they feel safe. I need to run this at a certain level. And that's what they were doing with that woman in the book, is they were going very slow, making her feel safe, and time limits were a big thing too, because in the street, the panic and the scary thing about the street is we don't know how long the attack is going to go on for.
Yeah.
Right? It's like going to like COVID. That's why COVID was so hard for people, because at first, couple weeks, guys, there was a time limit.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 weeks, I can pace myself. There's an expectation. I can understand when this is going to end. When that 2 weeks stopped, and now we kept going, and now we didn't know when it was going to end, that's when we saw the mental break in people.
And that's what we turn into, like what learned helplessness is, right? Like you have your individual trauma, which is what we carry. You have collective trauma, which is almost the same as the individual trauma, but the collective trauma is within the social group. It's a blow to the psyche of the social fabric. The learned helplessness is that, but it's like there seems to be no give, right? You keep punching me and I'm on my heels the entire time. So now we get into those stages of response, fight, flight, or free, or that, not states, but those responses, fight, flight, freeze, or fawning, or those kind of mixed together. It's like, well, you just keep beating me down with something. I've got no way out. And then, you know, being a victim, there's no perceived way out of this, of this struggle and this process. So now that narrative has been burned and in the brain, and it's like, well, every time now I'm going to think that every time I'm under somebody, I'm in a threatened position.
And for how long?
And how long is this going to last, right? So there's a bunch of other complex things that we get into in later episodes and stuff like that, but that's sort of the our collective reasoning behind what we want to do. One of the things that I remember in that book, if I think it's the same person they talk about in that book, they took advantage of the fact that a lot of her lessons at the beginning of her journey, I think it was Women Empowered she was doing.
Yeah.
And she took the advantage because she had the means, which is another thing we can talk about too, to do private lessons for the first little bit because of the traumatic experience. So remember how we were talking about before is like, we can help somebody with the somatic release as an instructor. I'm not quite there yet, but you guys as instructors help with that somatic release, get that person to trust you. What happens there though is that that person could maybe only trust you. So then it's also getting them to understand, well, this other instructor is also trustworthy and can help you through this. So it's the slow introduction of making sure that they understand that the people that are there that we're dealing with anyways can be trustworthy throughout the whole program and the longevity of their time at the dojo and the training area. So that's kind of what I'm taking from it and what I took from what she said, and that's what we want to bring to the table from T4TCS perspective. So
Yeah, no, and I think it also helps when, with proper instructors, that the entire dojo has almost like a family atmosphere. So once that transfer from like trusting, your coach, happens to other people, it's a lot easier because everybody's sort of on the same wavelength.
yeah,
That's why we kind of mentioned that, we kind of want to train everybody, just because then if we have a person like this, we can even, quietly mention that, this is what's going on. So, watch for certain triggers or whatever. Maybe don't do that. Or if anything happens, they can spot it and just notify us and say, hey, listen, something's going on here right now.
yeah,
That's why I think that dojo environment is very important, not just from teacher's perspective, but also students.
yeah. And that's the other thing too, right? Like, let's say for example, there's only one trauma-informed trained person there. Well, that's amazing. It's a start, and it could be great. But what if not everybody in the classroom is comfortable with, because everybody knows Mark is trauma-informed trained, and when something happens, everybody that person who's getting the help might not always feel comfortable because everyone knows that Mark is the guy that's trauma-informed trained. So people are going to be thinking, oh, well, something's there, something's wrong. Whereas, and that's not a bad, like, when you have a good culture and you have trust with everybody, nobody's going to care about that. But when you start to get new students in, that might be a different story. So having a dojo or a training center with all of the senior members, instructors, and trained at that level of being trauma-informed, nobody's going to feel that being singled out.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
And I
right,
look at it like
absolutely.
a health and safety thing. It should be like a first aid hand in hand.
Exactly, right? And then, everybody's going to be able to recognize that. Now, depending on the severity, then we can go to the next level of, say you quietly just say, go speak with Eric or go speak with Mark or go speak with, that person who's at the next level later on, right? And then that can be handled more privately.
But with technology, that's so much easier. Like you can just put that person aside and say, listen, I'm going to give you Eric's email or whoever's email.
Yeah.
I'm going to have them email you, and then you can touch base with him. And then you could do that over Zoom from the comfort of their own home, start to build that trust, and then into meetings in person. But that's a great point, having multiple people there. And it's not just that. I was thinking about too is, with instructors, it's draining. You got a lot of people.
That's true. Even just the instruction itself. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people coming through. Some people catch things on more than others. Some students show potential, but they don't show up. It's draining, time away. We all go through stuff too, right? And it's important too. It's like, as we're instructors, we're human beings as well.
Yeah.
And if I see a fellow instructor going through some stuff and I see maybe he's losing his patience more in class, it's like we can be there to help each other as well. Before that, we take what we're going through, and we're being triggered sometimes by class. Like if I'm saying something and somebody's not paying attention, I'm like, I might get bark a little bit.
Yeah.
But maybe I bark at the wrong person.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Right? And now I'm driving them away. So it's like that scaling portion too is taking into inventory of where am I at today. You know,
Yeah.
if I got some things going on and I have this education on, I'm understanding where I'm at, what the causes could be, and what the potential outcomes can be. I could turn around and say, hey Jacob, you know, I need you to teach class today, brother. I'm not there today. You know, and then in that turn, because one bad day you can now you're the instructor, you're in a leadership role, and if you're going through your own things, and you're just going through day to day, oh I got to show up. No, take the day to feel what you're feeling. If you feel like you're going to pass that on to the some, because now you can trigger somebody else and do some other shit.
Yeah.
You know, and it's important that we have this training for the student, but also for each other as staff members.
Yeah. So it's, again, self-awareness and the emotional intelligence for other people. So yeah, we touched on some awesome points, and one of the best things that you mentioned too was identifying what are we here for, what is the purpose, and that brings us here to the segue. So, and that this is where you guys are going to talk about it, because I don't have as much experience in the training realm with respect to that. Is, yeah, we want to try and, as much as we reasonably can, what is the purpose for them coming to the dojo for training? If we can get a bit of just a reasonable background, you know, if they say self-defense, okay, well, what is the, you know, the sub or the underlying reason of the self-defense training? If they care to share, cool. If they don't, at least we know a little bit more, and we're still aware of the purpose. But now we're getting into, like, we can get people in there, and we see it all the time. There's so much that saturates social media with respect to certain fighters, whether they're professional or novice. There's a lot of ego out there, right? Everybody's got they carry their own stuff. But we'll dial into what you guys have experience in terms of, what do you see the differences are with respect to training somebody for combative role or competition versus self-defense? Like, what are those differences there? We know there's some of them, but like, from your experience, what are we looking at?
I mean, so what I would say is, with self-defense, I would say it's a completely different approach. Completely, I think you really want to keep it very simple, because you want to build that confidence at first.
Right.
Right. Like anything else, and yes, and fighting is the same. But I find, especially with self-defense, like you said, there could be an underlying issue. Therefore, the confidence might not be there, and it has to be kind of feathered very carefully. Therefore, even I usually had an approach of show someone a technique 3 times. And for example, if they're not getting a certain part of the technique right, for that day, let it go. Because overcorrection, unfortunately, kills the confidence. So say, great job. So yeah, you cannot be overcritical. Obviously, if it's really bad, then you have to correct it. But I find that I try 3 times, and if that person's still not getting it, just let it go. I find with people who come into combat, a lot of times, especially with men, that confidence is there already.
Okay.
More so than in self-defense. Therefore, it's almost like the reverse. You have to make sure that they don't get into sparring too quickly, because that's an ultimate confidence killer. Because they think, well, you know, I'm doing great on the bag, great on the pads, and they're like, oh, I'm a killer, you know? And compared to some of the friends they have that are not doing martial arts, they look great. But how many times I've seen people getting to a first sparring class, and they come out and they're like, they don't know what hit them. It's like, man, what happened?
Yeah.
Right? And some of them never recover. So I find that it's almost like a reverse approach, at least for me.
Yeah.
Where I have to kind of feather the confidence down for someone who wants to fight, and kind of further confidence up for someone who's doing self-defense.
Right.
Because I think the goals are completely different.
Yeah.
That's the way I say. So basically, yes, for fighters, control their ego very much. I always say that leave the ego outside the gym.
Yeah.
The minute you open that door, ego stays outside. You cannot bring ego to the dojo at all.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you mentioned that the whole sparring thing, because Mark and I think we were talking about it yesterday or Wednesday, I can't remember. I think it was Wednesday, and so I'm dipping my toes into the sort of the mixed martial arts realm right now, and I find when I spar, and I catch it too, because I try and approach, first of all, I'm approaching everything from the lens of I don't know anything at all, because I want to keep my mind open. I want to keep that bias in check. But I find that when I get into the sparring thing, I'm catching myself blinking and kind of moving back and flinching a little bit when the object is coming towards me. And what that does is it interrupts my movement from either blocking or doing the right parry or slipping properly, because I'm seeing it and I'm like, oh, it's just that split second, right? Then it interrupts that thought process. So but you put me on a bag and I'm okay, right? Like you said, you can hit the bag all you want, but you put an object in front of you, you put somebody in front of you that's actually fighting back, it's a completely different game.
Yeah.
No.
So the confidence, and I see that's where that confidence is important to keep when you're doing when you're training somebody in self-defense, but also important to dial back that overconfidence with somebody that might be coming in with an ego that's coming in for a combat reason.
That's why sometimes when I'm training people, I try to give them an understanding of where they're at without insulting them or blowing smoke up their ass. Okay,
Yeah.
so for example, if I see somebody starting to hit the pads well or starting to hit the bag well, I'll be like, hey, it's looking good, form's looking good. You're almost ready for sparring.
Right.
Yeah, because it's so vague. Like almost could be anything. Could be a week, could be a month.
But the point is like you're not there. No matter how good or comfortable you're getting on here, you're not there. And to what Jacob was saying, 100% I agree with him, because if you just think about it, right? The person who comes in for self-defense is coming in because they realize they have a deficiency or incapability to do something that they find value in.
Okay, that's interesting to say. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually.
Because, well, essentially that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
You go and seek a mechanic because you don't know how to fix your car. It's just simple.
Yeah.
They're going for a service. That in itself, especially for men, is a really hard thing to do. Hey, can you teach me how to be a man?
Yeah, well, that's a whole other topic.
This is
that we
why.
can talk about.
But no, but this is to touch
Yeah.
on the ego, right?
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
that-
there's that whole toxic masculinity thing that people are talking about,
Masculinity
right?
is not toxic.
No, but that's what I mean. So,
Right?
anyways, that's a whole other
Yeah.
subject we can talk
What
about.
I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is just to add to what Jacob's point, because when he said that people who come in to compete are usually have more ego than the person who doesn't. Well, because that person had to swallow a hard pill before he walked in the door.
That's true, right? And again, when we talk about the trauma,
Exactly.
who knows what that was?
And that's not even in there, right? Because maybe this person, their trauma is just like you said before. And I don't, correct me, because I don't know how to articulate it properly. I'm not sure, but what's that type of trauma where it's like, is it secondary or by watching something without having?
So there's secondary or vicarious trauma.
That's right.
They're kind of the same, but not, right? But
Small
essentially,
distinction.
you're hearing about it, you've witnessed it, or you've like as an interviewer for myself, it was listening to people's stories.
Right.
Right.
And you associate with it, or you visualize what that might look like, and then you
That's right.
carry that, right?
And not just what you said, that also comes back to what you were talking about earlier too. Like, you guys are instructors, right? You have your personal job, and then you come in as an instructor. You're also dealing with other people, so your battery is only going to last so long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's
so
tiring.
that's kind of what it's. All of that kind of is relatable. They're not the same, but they're not mutually exclusive, if that makes sense. So
Right.
sorry, yeah, carry on.
So these people, right? Like they might be coming in because, like you said before, a lot of stabbings. For example, let's just say, John Doe works in the city, and he has to take the subway every day. and he's constantly seeing or hearing things. Now he
Yeah.
hasn't quite experienced it, but he's starting to develop this fear, this trauma, and it's giving him anxiety, and he's carrying with this, and now it's affecting his job. And then by the time he gets home, he's so wound up. His relationship with his family is different, right?
Yeah.
It's still a trauma, even though it hasn't directly happened to him, right? So now he's like, shit, what would I do if I actually got attacked? I have no clue. And now that feeling of not having the skills to deal with that, that's a scary thing.
Yeah. So there's that anxiety and learned helplessness, right?
However-
We're hearing about it, and this is what I want to do.
However,
Yeah.
that is the beginning of something important, because
Yeah.
you cannot fix a problem unless you identify what that problem is.
Yeah.
So this person now has come to the realization that they don't have a certain skill set, but they're willing to damage the ego, or they're willing to whatever, because they know they need it. So when that person comes in, I find those people are easier to approach. They're easier to train because they're trusting you, they're willing. Now, as a coach, that also is going to change how I teach them, what I teach them, where they strike, and also language. For example, if I'm training somebody in a combative art, all right, your opponent versus the attacker.
Mm.
It might seem like small things, but it paints a different picture,
Right.
right? If I'm teaching a person who's doing sports, I need to teach them how to navigate in a ring, how to cut angles, how to do this and that. Well, in the street, we have to deal with different environments: close quarter, narrow,
Yeah.
in a car, in an elevator, in an open space. And the way I break it down for self-defense is, like, again, to Jacob's point, you made a great point. You need to keep it simple. These
Yeah.
people are not coming in to be an athlete. They're not coming in as the enthusiast who wants to lose weight and just, get good at, or an art, right? They're coming in for a specific objective. So I need to understand, I need to trim the fat. And the way I look at it is, I don't look at it as a martial art now, where there's culture and there's drills and form, and
Yeah.
it's a dump truck system now. It's I'm giving you the bare bones. We're trim the fat. We're gonna go right to it.
Right. Get all the fundamentals in there.
Basic, because and this person might not be coordinated. I need them to have some coordination, but I'm not looking for pretty. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for effective and direct. Right? And then what it does is it's going to change the way I teach them, because in self-defense, as far as I'm concerned, and the way that I've been influenced by many great instructors, but the way I formulate it is, what's the common denominators here? So it's either going to be three things when I train people, right? And we can train the same thing, and I'll sample this with you, because this is part of the T4 TCS. Is I funnel into three primary things. Is number one, do I need to leave this area?
Yep.
If I need to leave this room, I'm going to fight differently than if I don't want to leave this room.
Or if I can't.
Or if I can't. Because I look at it this way. I'm in a scenario, active shooter, bar fight, I'm with my wife, I'm going to be jumped. I need to get out of here. How I move, I'm not going to sit there and wrestle with people. It's going to be very much touch and go, hit where I can, get to my objective.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at abduction, my fight is different. I want my weight heavier. I'm holding on to shit. It's a different approach.
And we're dealing with a different mindset too.
Different
Like,
mindset.
never
And this
give
is
up,
it.
right? Yeah.
This is it. You need to learn to fight for objective, because you're not going to remember, especially under stress, stress inoculation, and everything that happens. You're not going to be able to remember technique A, B, V, C, D.
And combo one, combo
You're not
three,
gonna remember that
yeah,
shit.
It's not going to happen.
No. But if I tell you, Eric, you need to get out of here, that is something very simple that the brain can then say, leave.
Yeah.
And your body will autopilot,
It doesn't matter what I do. I'm just finding a way out. Yeah.
right? Desperation, but you understand the direction.
Yeah.
Your body's naturally going to fight for that purpose. Now, we'll teach you knee strikes and palm, heel, whatever it is that we're teaching you. But now your brain is automatically going to gear those simple techniques,
Yeah.
which Jacob mentioned, but towards a purpose, instead of spending it exasperating yourself and getting tired with no
No objective.
yeah,
Yeah.
because now you're wasting energy.
That's
and this
right,
is
yeah.
where you get into the freeze, fight, or fawn. Because if you're spending this is self-evident in the first roll of a white belt. They get under somebody, they gas, they're tired, they don't know what to do, they flop. They'll tap without even being subbed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because why? They don't know how to exert. First of all, they don't understand their way out.
And the efficiency of energy and stuff. Yeah.
And this is it. So that is the one, is how to fight leaving this. So what I'll do is, like something simple, I'll create a perimeter. Or, we make a doorway.
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Your attacker's gonna go. Go. You have 2-minute round. Your goal is to go there. So what is the attacker gonna do? Not let him leave. And it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Second round, same perimeter. Don't let him take you out. I can think of like a sumo.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's that going to do? It's going to change your breathing. It's going to change your weight distribution, your footing. Everything changes.
Yeah. And your tactics start to change, and your strategy and your brain changes too, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And lastly is, I call it the bodyguard. What if you're with a loved one? How to fight with your loved one. How to keep them behind you. Teach them to hold on. Teach them how to, if I hold my attacker, teach your person that you're defending how to help you.
Yeah, and that's a game changer too. And then
Big time.
We'll plug back in there, but that's another important point to talk about too, is that you get into that scenario, your loved ones are there. When we talk about trauma, we mentioned it in the intro, Jacob mentioned it, that fight's not going to be over.
No.
When it's over, even though physically it's over, whether you win or lose, that mental health fight after the fact is going to be a long one for the entire family.
Yeah, it might
Win
not
or
be
lose.
equal for
Right, your kid, whether
I
it's your
could handle
daughter,
it better, but yeah, my daughter might be completely destroyed.
especially having to witness all that, right?
Yeah.
So like, again, we'll plug back in, but that's another point I wanted to make sure that we understood, is that, this is all great. We want to fight, like we do this to defend ourselves. We want to save ourselves, make it if it's a last resort thing. But just because that happens doesn't mean that when we walk away, we're going to be okay.
And that's the misconception, I think.
Yeah.
And this is why I think that what we're doing here is going to have some real value, because, Jacob and I have a lot of experience training people of different shapes and sizes, abilities, and objectives. But what we don't have is your experience and your understanding. And now this merging of experiences is really, really going to give, I think, something really valuable to the community. Because same thing with self-defense, right? We teach the people, a good self-defense instructor will teach them, very basic, gross motor, but effective techniques. Great.
Yep.
A really good instructor will teach them and spend time on how to be really aware, how to read body cues, look for pupils, smell of alcohol, voice tone, body posturing, environment. And that's the other thing. Self-defense does not just mean against a person.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right? People forget. But that is a good portion of it. The portion that's missing is the aftermath.
But also, you touched on it too, though, is not a lot of them talk about the situation awareness, right? There's some people that's like, I took a course about it, and I got the SASAP, the Situation Awareness Advanced Practitioner. It came with a bunch of other experience, but they're like, does that make you paranoid? I was like, no, I'm just aware of what's going on. I don't have to be paranoid to be aware. No. Well, what do you mean? Well, I'm just paying attention to what's around me in the environment. My wife used to bug her, and she says it's the man seat when we go to a restaurant, for example. I like to see what's going on.
You sit in the corner, right?
Right. I try to sit either, but also close to an exit, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to pay attention to, I want to see the environment. I want to see where the kitchen is. Why? Because that's another exit back there.
100%.
Right? I want to look at the, fire extinguishers, for example. Why? Well, they can leave a gnarly mark on somebody. Plus, it can cause a distraction if there's something going on.
Or put out a fire.
Put out a fire, break a window if there's no other way out. There's all kinds of cool stuff. So, but that's my point is not, I'm not telling everybody to go break windows and stuff like that with fire hydrant or fire extinguishers, but it's just to be aware of what you have around you and the exits that are there and what your environment's like. Because if something does happen, one of your first things to do is what you mentioned before. If you can get out, get out.
100%.
100%. I mean, avoiding a fight before it happens, I'll take that. 100%.
I don't know anybody that wouldn't.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you see that something is suspicious, not only you can leave early, you can call police.
And you can let everybody else
Exactly.
around you
Say,
know.
get out, get out, get out.
Right? This is not going to be a good thing,
Yeah.
right? So there's that. So that touches on the self-defense side of things, which is really great. And from a trauma-informed perspective, that's really important to have people understand that when we're teaching them and bring them in as clients. Now we talk about the competition style or competition training. We're facing a little bit like we could have somebody, and most likely do have clients or people that come in that have that trauma that's attached to them. They come into training, but their purpose is for competition. You mentioned they have, they already have some of that confidence and that ego, but knowing what we know now about the trauma stuff, what is it that we want to look out for when we're doing like competition? You're doing a ton of drilling with people. We're getting technique down. It's drill after drill after drill and just constantly going at it. Like, we could be looking at other stressors there too.
The first thing I look for with somebody who's coming in for competition is, number one, is like Jacob said, some people come in and they're more like, oh, I think I'm a tough guy, I want to do this.
Yeah.
First thing I want to do is I look at it like a wild horse. Put him in the pen and let's see. And if he's wild and he's bucking, I break him. And I don't make that like I beat him up in sparring.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is, I don't care about how hard he hits. I don't care about how strong he is or athletic he is. I want to know about his mental fortitude. I want to know what his breaking point is. Because that intel will also tell me what his triggers or traumas are, right? Get into that fawn state, right? So what do I kill them with is with workout. I kill them with bag. I kill them with one more, let's go, push, because I want to see if you have the fighting spirit. Because if you don't have a fighting spirit, you're not going to be a good fighter. Because I know a lot of guys, and Jacob will speak to this, they're really good on pads, they're really good at sparring, they're great in the gym, but they choke when they compete.
Yeah, and so like when you're talking about the fighting spirit, just to be clear.
And that's me. That was me for a
Right.
long. I suffer severe anxiety. I had a lot of trauma growing up, and that's why when I got into martial arts, it wasn't about competing for me. Although I started doing traditional martial arts and competing, I liked it, but it wasn't. It's not what I was. I wasn't getting what I wanted out of it.
Right.
I had different issues I needed to deal with, but like there's some people that don't have that fighting spirit, and I want to know what breaks them and how they act when they break.
Yeah, and I remember that going through some of the drills too, even with yourself. It's like, well, you did one the other day, last Saturday. It's like, it's purposely designed to exhaust you. And you're going to look like an octopus stuck in a ceiling fan trying to go through the drill and finish the exercise because you're so freaking tired. But it doesn't matter. Just keep the body and the limbs moving. It doesn't matter if they're slow. Just keep going. There's more gas in the tank, like you mentioned, right?
I didn't care about technique per se at all. It was
Especially
more
with
of
the
a
drill,
mental
yeah.
drill than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's important because now what it does is it gives me a baseline.
Yeah.
It also helps me read. See, this is the beauty of it. This is why I'm really enjoying what you're sharing with us, because now I can see it from a trauma side. But how I was looking at before is I was looking for the cues so that I understand when my fighter is depleted.
Yeah.
Or when they're mentally breaking. Because if I can recognize what that looks like in the gym, I'll be able to recognize that and deal with it in the actual ring.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a look that some of our students have. There's a physical response they start to show. And that's when we know as coaches, that's when we need to light that fire in their ass or decide whether or not it's over.
Yeah.
Right? So I like to do that. And I like to do that with the ego guys too, because it's very easy for them to get in there and use force against another person. Or sometimes what you do is you make them spar against your senior guys, or you spar them and you touch them up and you make them understand that your size and strength is not.
Take it down a bit. Yeah.
Right. But sometimes that causes a trauma on itself.
Yeah.
Right? So I like doing it through the physical part first. Because for me and my experience is that if I can break you like that, it does two things. Number one, it humbles them. And number two, they can't complain the same. They can't say the same thing because like you couldn't even survive the workout. And the guy that he knows or thinks in his mind that he can beat is smashing the bag and still going. So now he can't identify him as the weaker person before conflict because they can outperform him. So
Yeah.
it gives a level of respect immediately.
Yeah, so you're checking the ego. Yeah.
Big time. Once they do that, then you do that without pegging them out. And then when they're failing, you can go up to them and say, hey man, great work. You were killing it. Even if they failed, it's their effort that mattered.
Yeah.
Not the result. So then it gives them this like, oh man, but they'll come back. And now when they come back with a hand extended.
Yeah, success breeds success.
Yeah. I want the hand extended, not their chest. Now I have a place to work from. Then we get them going, and then you start to see, okay, now, do they have coordination? How do they act like when a punch is coming towards them?
Yeah.
We need to do composure drills, build up their confidence. The first thing is to build up the defense. If they can get comfortable in their defense, that's number one, because when everything goes wrong in the fight and you are getting, put it on you,
Yeah.
the last resort is going to be,
You got to defend. Yeah.
and if they can start to get comfortable in that and not panic, then they can start to watch. They can start to time their counter. They can weather. And that for me, I would equate to being stuck under somebody in jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, especially when I know there's a couple of guys that are at the dojo that are bigger and they're still agile.
But for how long?
They're agile and they know how to use the weight and they know how to regulate.
Yep.
And it's like I purposely put myself to spar with that person because I know it's hard for me. Right? And I'm testing my own strength and my mental strength because I want to see how long I'm going to last. Okay, last time, for example, it'll be like, I don't know, I was a minute and a half under them and I couldn't find a way out. And then I got so tired, they subbed me. All right, let's do it. Like, do you want to roll again? Yeah. Are you nuts? Yeah, let's do it again. I want to see how much long. I want to see how long I can be uncomfortable for and then still be able to think.
Yeah, it also shows you kind of like you can measure, okay, today I lasted this long. And then, a week from now, I lasted this long. And as much as you still got submitted, it took twice as long.
Yeah. And
to me, that's a win.
And to me, there was people that well, what do you, don't you hate going in? I'm like, no. Yeah, but you're talking about, you sparred with this person, but they got you. Yeah, that's fine. I just didn't do the same thing again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why do you keep going back? Because I want to improve. Everybody's got a different body composition, a different mentality that they come in with, and I want to know what it feels like to be uncomfortable under those people. And to me, that's how I learn. It's the stress test for me. Like when you and I would spar, you'd put all this stuff together when I first met you, and all of a sudden I see you come out with all these pads on, and I asked, do I need any gloves? No. And I'm like, well, why the fuck is Mark wearing all this stuff then? And then the switch goes on, and then Mark is attacking me. He's like, get out of it. I'm like, what? And then I'm on the ground in 5 seconds, and then he's got me in a heel hook or whatever it is, right? So I tell people that. They're like, are you nuts? I'm like, no, that was pretty awesome. But he beat you. That was the point. I didn't do my job, right? It's the stress.
Yeah.
It's the stress. Can you handle the stress?
And it's necessary.
Right? And to me, I was like, okay, well, I don't need my gloves, but he's all geared up, so I know something's up. Right? He's expecting something from me, and he's obviously not expecting me to hit him lightly. So he's expecting a response here in this session. So that means he's going to turn it up.
But it also gets you used to that contact. So when it happens for real, you've experienced something like this already. This is not a new thing. Like today we talked about liver shots. It's better to experience it in sparring so you know how it feels.
Oh, yeah.
If your first liver shot is in your actual fight, oh, good luck.
That's
Is it-
that's traumatizing.
That's traumatizing.
Well, we were sparring with one of the other fighters there, or the people we train with, and I remember I got hit with a few of her kicks, and I took them in the lat and stuff like that. And I remember coming back the next day into jiu-jitsu in the morning, and I'm like, why is my side so freaking sore? And I lifted my shirt up, and it was like, it wasn't black, but it was, it was orangey blue. And I'm thinking about it like, oh, right, I didn't block those kicks, and they were pretty hard.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
you get used to that, and the only way to get used to it and to know how it feels is to get hit.
So the thing with putting on the suit and stuff like that, and this is like, I think this is where the magic lies, right? Like, if I tell you, okay, I'm gonna grab you, and this is the technique, and this is where we're gonna work, but I'm letting you work through that.
Yeah.
That's a learning speed.
Yeah, we did that for 2 months. And
That's a
then
learning speed.
you didn't tell me anything. You just said, I just asked
That,
about.
but that's part of it,
Yeah,
right? Because
that's the
when are you
point.
gonna be attacked?
Yeah.
You don't wake up and get a text message like, I'm gonna ambush you today, love you know who, right?
Come find me.
But in that like, oh shit moment, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? But this is where this is how I like to do the self-defense. Is like, you go to a self-defense seminar and they teach you the technique, and then you do it against somebody who lets you do it, and everybody leaves and thinks they can do it, and then they go home to their boyfriend and they're like, "Would you learn? Let me show you," and it doesn't fucking work.
Yeah, and that's that's the unfortunate part. There's a lot of people selling snake oil and over like a false sense of security.
But it might not be
Yeah.
that they're teaching them the wrong thing. It could be just that they're teaching them the wrong way.
But that's what I mean. They leave. There's a false sense of
Right.
security there because it's not practical,
No,
right?
but even if they show them practical stuff, they didn't really pressure it.
Yeah.
And so the
Right.
thing is this,
Okay.
that's what I'm alluding to. So the thing is this, like, we worked those techniques for a while, right?
Yeah.
But I was letting you do them because
Yeah.
you had to learn it.
Yeah.
So here's today, I'm going to put this on, find it. It's just like jiu-jitsu. Do the armbar, drill the armbar. Okay, do it in a live roll. Not the same.
Yeah.
However, how do you get good at doing the armbar? You have to
Pressure
roll
test it, yeah.
so you can find how it make it work. Because here's the thing: if somebody teaches you something and you keep doing it, it doesn't mean shit. You're just basically learning the movements and mechanics and trying to understand when and where, and you're creating reference points,
Yeah.
right? When you do it under stress, you are now teaching the brain to find those reference points while adapting, while regulating, and while doing all this other stuff. But the thing is now is you're not relying on me to let you make it work. You have to rely on your ability to problem solve and make it work.
Yeah.
And once you do that, that is when you own the shit. That is where true confidence comes from, because no matter what now, it's not that I can do it when he lets me, it's I can do it because I'll find a way.
Yeah, and I'm starting to pick up some of those visual cues and all that
100%.
stuff. So, and that's awesome. I love how you put that. So hopefully people take away. I want to finish though with that competition thing, and we've run out of a bit of time here. So we understand the differences between self-defense and competition training. What we need to understand before and when we bring in that person. Now, competition's over. We talked about, when the fight is over in a self-defense scenario, it's not over. From a trauma perspective, competition, I presume it would be the same thing, right? They're dealing with, they went through drills, we went through training, we went through sparring. Here's the expectation. Competition, what the objective is to win. Let's say it doesn't happen. Is the loss as severe, knowing what we know now, knowing what you know now? Could we understand or reasonably understand that the loss would be as severe in terms of the mental state in a competition versus a self-defense scenario? Right? They have those fight psychologists, like that stuff is starting to get, it has been in the last little bit anyways, fight psychologists and competition psychologists and stuff like that come in and to help fighters and stuff. But knowing what we know now from a trauma side of things, like we can, the way I look at it, we could better coach somebody after a loss, right? Help them go through those stages of response. Help them understand, hey, you know what? You went through a scenario that yeah, you control, you trained for it, you drilled for it, you sparred for it. This is what we knew. This is why we did it. But we lost.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it doesn't mean it's the end. Right. We can keep good fighters and good competitors in there with a good fight psychology, and by being trauma informed isn't one of those steps. Right. Helping them understand the stages of response. So that's another part of the coaching. Hey,
Yep.
this is what you're going through. When when you're in their corner in the ring, letting them know and coaching them through that 30 seconds that they have. This is what's, take a sip of water. And some of them don't understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the point of that is to help them slow their breathing down and calm them down, not so much to hydrate them.
No, it's not to hydrate them. It's more like just it slows them down. So first thing is like, yeah, give them the sip of water, or even just say, first thing is just breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe, breathe, breathe. Get them to that. Get them to regulate. Get them to calm down. Once they start to breathe, then I'll start to speak. And I keep it short. I keep it street. What are you doing well? What you need to start doing.
Right.
That's it. That's it. That's all it needs, because they are going through so much. Their adrenaline's going, and I need to be just direct.
That's keep the fundamentals basic.
Yeah, I don't tell them you're winning this round, you're losing this round. I don't tell them that shit. It's like, keep doing that. It's working well. It's working well. This is what you need to do. Every time this person does this, I need you to try and counter this. What do I need you to do? They repeat. All right, good job. Keep going. Let's go. Breathe. Done. Simple.
Yeah.
Right? Because I want them to have autonomy. Right? I don't want them to tell
Yeah.
them how to do it. I'm telling them what to do it. What's the objective? Go make it work. And then it goes back to the training, right? In sparring, during if you get a chance to know who you're, sometimes you don't get to know who your person is until like only a couple weeks away.
Yeah.
Sometimes matches get mixed or whatever like that. But if you have an understanding and you can watch tape on them, you can formulate a plan, and then you can drill, and then in sparring she or he has to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right? And when they learn that they can make it happen and they understand where the cues are, where the plays are, she's gonna go in with that. He's gonna go in with that. And if they execute it, great. If they're not executing it and they start falling into this, I can't make it, that's our job as coaches, to bring her back.
Yeah.
To bring her back, or give her the guidance that he or she the guidance that she needs. Where I think that where you're gonna come in and this train for trauma stuff is like, say they have a bad knockout. Like, everybody pays attention to the concussion and the rehabilitation that way, but what is happening psychologically?
Well, even if just they lose, like, how do we let's walk them through. Here's the stages of response. You're going to be feeling something similar to this for the next little bit. Let's coach you through that, right? It's not over. If you want to continue, let's do this. And I should say it's not over unless there's something severely debilitating.
Right.
Right. So we have to be reasonable with that assessment, but we can coach them through that. The feeling that they're feeling from the loss.
Yeah.
We could also, depending on who it is, if there's, again, a sense of overconfidence, we want to make sure that people don't get over and put themselves up too high as they move along because there hasn't been a loss, and then all of a sudden they get to somebody and they're completely gone, and then you never see them again.
Yeah, because that's exactly when you build yourself up like this artificially. Some of those people never come back.
Yeah. And the whole point of what we're doing is to keep people in this game because it's good for their health. I mean, it sounds bad. We're going in there, we're beating up on each other, but at the same time, I mean, it's a somatic healing experience, right? And it's I don't know. To me, it's food for it's good for the soul. The people we meet, like, it doesn't matter what's going on. Yes, we bring this in. But it does, like, at a good dojo, at a good training center, doesn't matter who you are, what your background is. When you start rolling with people and you start sparring with them, your background doesn't matter.
No.
Everybody leaves there shaking hands, giving each other half a hug or whatever, and saying bye and see you tomorrow.
That's the one place. Religion,
none
race,
of it matters.
None of that matters, because there's a baseline of respect.
Yeah.
And effort and time you've spent with each other that's undeniable, and this is the type of stuff that makes people close.
Sorry about that, guys.
No problem. It's a type of thing that will make you close.
Yeah.
You sharing something that not many people.
Physically and psychologically, right? Like, there's There's no other time that I'm hugging another person outside of my household that intimately and sweating all over them. But yeah, I mean, that's where, we talked about ego, the self-defense portion, which I think is the most important one, really, because
That's my passion.
it's yours, it's mine. I know it's Jacob's. There's a mix of competition in there, but the overall objective is to help people out.
Yep.
And now we have a well-rounded ability and something to offer. And hopefully, this is available on YouTube and every single podcast that you can think of. Why? Because we want this to reach as many people as possible. So I know we're running out of time there, so I don't know if there's any closing remarks for you guys.
I think we said pretty much everything for now. I mean, we're not stopping, right?
Oh yeah, it was just.
This is just the beginning.
The adrenaline, the small adrenaline dumps that I get, when little things start to happen, it's hard to contain. Sometimes, and I message these guys at like 3 a.m. sometimes. So.
Yep.
I would just say, like, anybody who does watch this, interact, ask us questions, because like this is definitely a passion. With regards to martial arts, is a passion for me. I think it's what I have an ability that I feel like through this engine, I'm helping people. I know that I've helped people, and I meet great people, and it gives me a sense of worth.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm never going to stop doing. So, but if I can reach more people and collaborate with people who have really good skills that they can bring to the table, that we can crowdsource and provide, I mean, why wouldn't we? So, and I don't think it's something that it's common in practice in the martial arts right now. So if we can kind of set an example through Eric, Jacob, and myself, and that other people later on will do the kind of collaborate and do the same thing, I think it's another dynamic to the martial arts community that'll benefit a lot of people, especially because a lot of ex-military and ex-law enforcement find they don't have that same brotherhood that they do when they're in the military.
Ah, yes.
And so they look for it in these types of things, and they often carry a lot of baggage with them. And having somebody who's trauma informed in that substitute brotherhood is going to help them heal, but also give them a avenue to have that thing that they're longing in a positive way. So please interact with us. And even if this isn't something that's for you, if you know anybody who's gone through a traumatic experience and might benefit through this, just send them the link, and that's what I'm wanting to get out of it, is just to get that reach.
Awesome. What about you?
No, same thing. I mean, through interaction, we'll know which direction we should go, right? We got to listen to people, and whatever people want us to talk about, then we'll talk about it. Find the right people. If we don't have the answers, then we'll get someone who does have these answers. Like I said in the first introduction, we may not have all the answers, but we sure will try to get them for you.
Absolutely. And so feel free, like Jacob just mentioned, and Mark, leave comments. We will read them. We will take things into consideration. We'll try and find answers. As Jacob said as well, it's not just going to be the three of us all the time. If you want to come onto the show, onto the channel, onto the podcast, and chat about some of this stuff related to trauma-informed training, feel free to come along. We have a ton of content that we already are going to release and we're going to talk about, but we also invite guests to reach out. We already have some of them planned. One of them has agreed to come on our show, on the podcast and on the channel, to speak with us, and he was the same individual that invited me to speak to his students. So that one will come up soon. And we also have a couple of the senior members in the dojo that have agreed to come and talk. So anybody from law enforcement, the military, if they're able to, and if the situation allows it, feel free to reach out, talk to us. We might not have the answer you're looking for, but we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll figure it out on the show, right? Maybe that's something we talk about then. So The final note is, like they mentioned, restoring that sense of agency in people, finding that camaraderie that's missing, and restoring confidence. And that's the biggest thing. And understanding how to interact with somebody, understanding that they have story of their own is big, and that's what we're here for. So, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and have a good week.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.